It is Friday, March 25th. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, hello everyone, welcome back. It's another exciting Friday because not only is GHOSTWIRE Tokyo now available completely, because that was in early access on PSN for 3 days, but now it's totally out. And reviews were good, not fantastic, but it speaks to a certain audience, and I'm part of that audience, so I can't wait to play it. So not only did that happen, but also Kirby, not PlayStation related, but I'm very excited for that as well, so a lot going on. And also a lot of things to talk about, so let's get started. First up, as always, our PS Plus reminder. Make sure you grab those March games before they go away, and we should be talking about the April games very soon, and hopefully the new service will be announced soon enough for us to really start dissecting that. But first story, let's talk about PS4 Firmware 9.50. It's a small update, but still something where it's very usable, and that's great to see this late into the PS4 lifecycle, where it's now in line with the new chat system, or party chat system on PS4 and 5, where there's closed and open parties that you can adjust, and namely for PS4, you can now individually set the voice chat volume for each separate party member. Really great, and also Ukrainian language on PS4 as well. For PS5, this one got a much bigger update. That would be 22.01.05.00. This was the firmware that was in beta for the past month or so, and now it's finally here, where it includes about 30 plus changes, features, improvements, and most notably that's going to be things like voice commands on PS5, also changes to game base, and some visual adjustments to the way that trophies look, which I think they look much better now. And that's basically it. There is a lot of minor things in there, which if you want to see them all on video being demonstrated, then you can see the video we did on Wednesday, but otherwise they're all in the changelog. There's only like 1 or 2 things in there that weren't in the changelog, but again, you can watch the Wednesday video for a complete breakdown. And yeah, when this firmware went out for PS5 and 4, there were some widespread reports of people not being able to reconnect to PSN, which is always a bit alarming. And I'm not sure how widespread this really was, because by the time I got to my consoles, it was fine. And I was reading some people were just restarting their consoles and then they could connect again. So it seems like it was a weird little bug or issue in that small moment. But otherwise, yeah, it's always a bit alarming when we hear about that, especially after an update. But seems like that wasn't really a huge issue. Now, what's more exciting is that when Sony actually put out the update for PS5, they did post on the PlayStation blog that, hey, variable refresh rate is finally coming, not in this one, but in an update in the coming months, which is at least that's good to see. And we knew PS5 was always going to get VRR. It was more a matter of when, and we had suspicions that it was going to be soon based on Sony finally rolling out updates for their TVs, which that went out like 2-3 weeks ago for various Bravia models. So good to see that PS5 is finally getting this, and of course, VRR is where your TV's refresh rate is trying to dynamically sync and match what the console is doing. So in the case of a game that's, let's say, 60 FPS, but it's dipping below 60, or let's say you're trying to play at 120, but really the game's hovering around 80 or 90, and it's going back and forth, and that's where you can run into the visual oddities and screen tearing that an unstable frame rate can give you. But when you have something like FreeSync, G-Sync, VRR, which they're all basically the same thing more or less, but for VRR on PS5, it's HDMI 2.1 and up to support up to 120 Hertz. That's where it can really come in and smooth out that image and make it not nearly as jarring as one would think. It more or less hides the issues, not necessarily fixing them, but I think you get what I'm saying here. Anyway, it should be for supported games, also unsupported games, which it'll be interesting to see how that works, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of tests coming out when this update is available. And I'm also going to assume Sony's going to roll this out to the PS5 SDK so developers can more easily add this to their games, and yeah, that should be soon, hopefully. Moving on to Gran Turismo 7. This game has had a very interesting launch and a not so good past week, where the game was review bombed heavily on Metacritic. We're talking 8,500 different user reviews with a total score of 1.5, which is extremely low, and obviously there's a part of that where it's a lot of dogpiling. I'm sure Xbox fans or whatever, I'm not sure how much that's really going to influence the score, but clearly it's quite low to the point where I won't say it's completely justified, but there are obvious angles of this where it is justified. And that's what's been so interesting about this past week, where you've got a lot of people delivering their takes on this, where the criticisms are there and they're warranted and they're justified, but then there's another part of it where some people are saying, you know, yeah, I'm playing the game right now, but I'm having a great time. I'm earning cars. I'm not spending any money, and that's fine, and that's totally okay. And that's sort of why I kept saying, like, just don't spend any money on the game and play it naturally and have a great time with it. And a lot of people are. Of course, that's easier said than done. Some people are more vulnerable, or again, MTX can be very predatory to younger audiences, but for the most part, you can play the game and not spend any money just fine. And that's okay. But we have to keep in mind that when it comes to looking at this thing holistically, which is everything, right? We're talking about the game comes out. It was reviewed, you know, good. It was received very well, but, you know, reviewers couldn't actually see the MTX in place until it launched. And that's when we learned after the scores came out that on average, cars cost more money if you choose to spend money on the game. Then we already know that for the in-game economy, you can't sell the car, so you have to keep playing to earn and then eventually buy something. We know that the recent patch actually cut the pay ratio for a lot of the higher earning races in the game, so it takes even longer to earn those cars now. You know, the optics for this entire thing it's not good, and also the online thing, right, where the game was offline for about 30 hours. Hello everyone, I'm coming at you in rare form here on a terrible webcam because as I'm working on this show, Polyphony actually put out an update responding to the criticism. So, over on the PlayStation blog, Kazunori Yamauchi detailed a few things that they're going to be doing. Immediately, 1 million credits will be given to players, and you have until the end of April to actually redeem that. Also, there's going to be a patch in early April, and that's going to increase the rewards across later parts of the game, of the world circuit, and also online races and a few other things. And then also, there's a later update that includes more ways to earn credits and things like that. I'm trying to get through this quickly. And also, it will let you they'll let you sell cars. So overall, not too bad. Which we'll say right away, nothing about removing the online connection. That's probably not going to go away. But this is what we were getting at. Holistically, overall, this was not good, but this is why the criticism was there, and it was valid, because now we're actually seeing a direct response. And wasn't quite a timely response, but hey, at least you know, this is exactly what I was hoping we would get, and so that's why I cut out this later part here, because that's more or less me ending off the story on a bad note. But thankfully, we've got some good news to report, and well, hopefully, if you're playing Gran Turismo 7 right now or regularly, then you can at least provide some comments on if this is you know, a sound response or not. Next up, of course, GDC was this past week, which technically it's still ongoing. Today's the final day, but the Game Developers Conference, this is something where we were wondering if we would get a public PSVR 2 reveal before GDC, because once it's here, we know that Sony's going to be there with the headset. It's really more a matter of, you know, if it's going to be public or behind closed doors, and we're finding out that most of what's happening is definitely behind closed doors, you know, not really public info. They're probably doing a lot of demonstrations, and we know that there was one talk yesterday about developing on the headset, so I'm sure we'll find more tidbits of info coming out in the coming days, but for right now, we don't really have too much. I would presume that's why we got the reveal of the headset design on the PS blog before GDC, because I'm guessing at GDC right now they've got something that's principally close to the final build of the design of the headset on hand to actually give those demonstrations. But anyway, the one thing we are seeing, or what did happen on Twitter, is that Chet Falazek, he was a writer on various Valve games, he sent out this tweet where he said, "Had one of those VR moments today playing in the new PSVR 2 HMD. You know, where the world just feels different when you return. So good. Thanks, USP, that's Shuhei Yoshida, and Greg Rice for the demo and chat." Now, this was posted on Reset Era, where one user in particular was like, "That's great, but sounds a bit too hyperbolic." And then the user Modus, who is a developer at Truant Pixel, and they're currently working on PSVR 2 right now, making the game Runner. They said it's not hyperbolic, and they elaborated further in the thread where they say, "I can't say anything specific. Sony has been extremely deliberate with a lot of their choices about this thing. They've been reading the room for a long time now. Performance and immersion goes beyond resolution. The numbers certainly matter, but the whole is definitely greater than the sum. Stop sweating about the wire. It'll disappear once you start playing, unless you're spinning in circles or something. Haptics make a bigger impact than you realize. Think about the first time you experienced the DualSense, and now consider it in the context of VR. People asking for videos, etc., it should be clear by now that that is never representative of the experience for VR, which often is unfairly scrutinized by gamers who are already very skeptical and jaded. I say this from experience. VR already has enough to prove for people, and showing unfinished builds with incomplete assets or performance hitches would not be in anyone's best interest. That last point is really important to keep in mind, and that's always been the case for VR, where it's like, if you've never tried it, it's so hard to convey what it's like, and it's always so mind-blowing when you do try it, and it really is as immersive and cool as you would think it is, but it's hard to watch a video and convey to someone that that's what it's really like. And that's actually what's so great about when we touched on this during the PSVR retrospective video I did 2-3 weeks ago or something, where it's like the first headset did reasonably well when it comes to units sold, but we're seeing that Quest 2, without truly confirmed numbers, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 million units shipped, and that's great because it stands on its own. You don't need anything else, and that's why people are actively buying it and engaging with it, and that's more people being exposed to VR and knowing what to expect. And for that, where on its own it's certainly okay, but if you have those owners now aware of what it's like to be in VR, and they eventually buy PS5s, and now you've got something where it's like, oh, well, now I have access to a much more premium VR experience, they might be more inclined to possibly buy it then, versus the hurdle that, say, the first PSVR headset had, because it really was in its infancy right next to, Oculus, where not many people had access to that either. So in theory, we're going into PS5 with more insight, but it's still not going to be easy to convey the true advancements in a PSVR 2 title with the haptics, the increased resolution, the foveated rendering combined with the gaze tracking. There's there's a lot happening here where it's no video, even a PSVR 2 proper trailer or showcase of games is not really going to convey that until you're wearing the headset and actually playing it. But this is what we were saying before. GDC is here. They're definitely trying to court a lot of developers that if they weren't on the headset before working on it, they're certainly doing it now, trying to get kits out there, and it's exciting. I'm definitely, I can't wait for this thing, and I hope it is within that neighborhood of holiday this year, or what it's now sounding like might possibly be Q1 2023. Now, while we're on the topic of hardware, this is a good time to move into our next story, which is about a possible PS5 Pro, which we've seen this rumor come up the past year or so occasionally, and this rumor is from, well, it's actually a bit old. It was from March 8th, where only recently sites started to report on this, but this is from the YouTube channel Red Gaming Tech, where he notes that he's had sources that he's talked to about Sony working on a PS5 Pro, and that potentially this could release sometime in 2023 or 2024, and that things could change, but it looks like Sony's looking into this, where they're getting down to a lower processing size, and of course a PS5 Pro in theory would be a lot more powerful, and it's something where we don't have to, I don't want to paraphrase the entire 20-something minute conversation that he posted, but it's just, it should go without saying that the rumor is another PS5, a Pro model coming, sometime 2023 or 2024. So the thing is, this is a good opportunity again to bring up occasionally when we hear about a PS5 Pro. The thing we have to remember immediately is that whether a PS5 Pro exists or not, Sony is already right now currently working on brand new hardware, and that could be a multitude of things. Not only getting the PS5 process size down and eventually releasing, say, a slimmer console that's a smaller form factor, doesn't heat up nearly as much, and so they can reduce all the components inside, they can shrink down the box, they can draw less power. A PS5 Slim is certainly an inevitability. Sony's done it every single time. It's going to happen. Not only is that currently being worked on, but it's almost a certainty that they're already doing a post-mortem on PS5 as a console and looking at a PlayStation 6 that happens very early in the console lifecycle. So there's that, and pretty much any other venture that they're looking at when it comes to R&D, and that could be anything because that's more or less a wild card situation. So all those things are already happening. Whether PS5 Pro is happening or not, they're definitely looking at tons of things, and that's where sources at the very least could be iffy. Not to say that Red Gaming Tech is wrong here. I'm not calling him a liar or nothing like that, but and I don't know the track record for him in particular, so I'm not really trying to speak on that in particular, but we have to remember that there's a lot of products coming out of Sony, and they're already doing them right now. And this is also where I will bring up the previous video we've done about a PS5 Pro. It seemed like a natural expectation. I thought that too a while ago, but if you consider many aspects of this, it might not seem nearly as likely when it comes to getting a lower process size, increasing the performance, being able to offer that at an affordable price. We've still got a chip shortage. And of course, the most important thing is people today still cannot buy a PS5 whenever they want. And you're going to have a really weird perception thing when by 2023 or even 2024, where, yeah, the timeline makes sense. That's 3-4 years after launch, and that's when we always see major hardware revisions from Sony at least. And so, yes, the timeline does make sense, but if we're waiting until next year to where people can comfortably buy a PS5 and now a new one comes out and the pricing structure is changing and there's a different value proposition being offered now, I mean, it's not really a good look, and I don't think they would be able to manage that too well. And then the big one that is really being overlooked here is that, yes, a PS5 Pro can offer more ray tracing in certain modes, or not have a huge hit to resolution, or possibly offer more native 4K 60 games, which is still very, very demanding and not likely. But if you offer those things in the PS5 Pro, you're taking away what a PlayStation 6 can do. We're in a land of diminishing returns when it comes to visual fidelity, performance, and you don't want to eat away at what a PS6 can do. And yes, we are still absolutely going to see a PlayStation 6. I mean, technology doesn't move nearly as fast as some would think, to the point where we're just not going to have another console cycle. It seems clear that we'll be using consoles and controllers for a very long time. And so there's a lot of things working against a PS5 instead of for it. And that's why I think it's always worth bringing up these points whenever a PS5 Pro rumor shows up. Moving on to our next news story, we have another major PlayStation acquisition, this time Haven Studios, the Montreal-based developer founded by Jade Raymond, working on a new IP, a live service game for PS5. They were only founded last year, and now Sony already tied the knot, so we've got a PlayStation blog post and also a conversation on gamesindustry.biz, so we've got some quotes to go over here. First up, from Jade Raymond herself, where she says, and I quote here, "As an SIE first-party studio, we will have the opportunity to collaborate with some of the world's most renowned development teams, including studios like Guerrilla, Naughty Dog, Media Molecule, and Insomniac Games, the creators of games that have inspired us as players and developers for years. We're excited to learn from these world-class studios, as well as the exceptional central creative, technology, and marketing teams whose expertise will enable us to deliver even better games to players." Now, that was on the PlayStation blog, so going over to gamesindustry.biz, we have another quote where she says, "PlayStation has its own unique secret sauce to getting to those amazing games. It's not by chance that you see so many 90-plus blockbusters from Sony. It's because they do something a little differently, and that's been the thing that we've experienced over the last year." Now, as for the head of PlayStation Studios, Herman Hulse, he says, and I quote here, "It's just easier for us to invest in the team and game more deeply this way. It is a testament to the fact that we've been very impressed with the progress that Haven has made. They're actually exceeding a lot of the plans, including in terms of time, which very rarely happens in game development, let me tell you. So we thought, let's invest deeply and do this properly." So this was certainly kind of a surprising announcement on Monday, although one where initially my gut reaction was, well, namely two things, which is, okay, so this is the first developer that Sony has in Canada, so they finally have a presence there now, which, to be honest, between Toronto, Montreal, I mean, there's a lot of talent there that I'm surprised they haven't actually tapped into much before, but, you know, now they've got a presence there. That, and also this feels exactly like Firesprite, where when Firesprite happened, I think there were a lot of people asking questions, but the thing is, with Sony, they're doing this in a way where they're hunting for the talent and not necessarily the IP, because as we've said before, they don't really have an IP problem. This is why there is a difference with how Sony and Microsoft are doing things. Microsoft does have an IP problem, and that's why you see them picking up full-blown publishers and massive creative output that pretty much gets them caught up, and they also want that for Game Pass. The Sony side of things, though, they not only do they not have that kind of capital, but the capital that they do have, they're using it in the way that best fits their model right now, which is they do mostly scout talent. And the thing about Haven in particular, and why it kind of reads like Firesprite, is that Firesprite does not really have this back catalog of titles that are wildly successful and they've been around for 2 decades and they're a proven developer, right? I mean, it's something where you can look at the employees individually and go, so-and-so has 20 years of experience doing this, doing that, what have you, right? I mean, it's a team of very strong people. They're all former Studio Liverpool and Psygnosis staff, right? They've got that experience, but because the Firesprite name, I mean, that wouldn't command a very high price. And for Haven, this is probably the same thing, where you can acquire them and it's not going to cost nearly as much as them, say, shipping this game and it doing, let's say it does very well, and all of a sudden the price to acquire them is going to be a lot higher. So I think this was really a combination of the relationship was just kicking off really good. The progress was fantastic. Not to undermine that, I'm sure what they're doing right now is probably something that definitely was convincing to Sony, but it was convincing in a manner where it's like, well, let's get this done. Let's get this done now, so it's not as costly down the road, or we don't perhaps lose this opportunity once we see that they're successful and they now have more leverage when they, say, want to do another project, or if they want to negotiate and sell, because we also have to remember that not every single developer and publisher wants to sell. So it was mutually beneficial, where she right away was like, yeah, we're going to sell, and PlayStation was lined up to buy. And that's kind of how I looked at Haven in particular, because it's very easy to look at this and go, they never even put out a game yet. But it is a team courting a lot of talent, and the relationship must have worked out quite well. And Jade brings up that point of what we've talked about a few times when it comes to PlayStation first party. I mean, that's what they're known for. This is what Sony has been this is the reputation they've built up throughout the entire late PS3 cycle and then all of the PS4 cycle, which is these high quality 85, 90 plus titles, always doing so well, and they're so polished. And so that's kind of what's happening here. It's hard to be excited for what they're working on, especially when we know it's a live service game, but at the very least, we'll see what happens now that they're under the PS Studios umbrella, because they will have much more tighter access and the available resources that we see PlayStation Studios get, and that's the exciting prospect. Now, once again, we're seeing more investment in live service games, and this is where people do tend to bring up immediately, I don't care about live service. Does this mean less single-player content? And we've seen time and time again that they keep reiterating that's not the case, and we're seeing it again. So in the same GamesIndustry.biz conversation, Herman Hulse said, and I quote here, "Obviously, we will always carry on making these single-player narrative-based games, such as Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us, and Horizon Forbidden West." And he goes on to say more about how they're just exploring other avenues like live service-based games, and that's what we keep bringing up. That's what Sony keeps saying. That's what I like to keep reminding people, is that this does not mean less single-player games. This company is not tone-deaf to the reality of what PS4 did for them, what that entire life cycle did for them, which is they doubled down on single-player, big-budget experiences, and it paid off greatly for them. And again, it even goes back to the late life cycle of PS3. They're well aware of the demand, and really it's a small, it's a really kind of a small market when you think about the big budget AAA single player space that is geared towards these, linear narrative experiences, or maybe even, a larger game like Tsushima or Horizon, where they can take, 30 to 60 hours to complete, even stuff like that, right? There's only so many games like that come out. They have that space locked down quite well, and there is investment. You're not seeing less single player games when we see all this growth when it comes to first party, doing a lot of mass hiring, and you've got studios now going from one project to two, and that second project might happen to be a multiplayer game, but you're getting the single player stuff. We're seeing these external partnerships. We're seeing acquisitions that, they're additive, right? They're not going to walk away from single player, at least not anytime soon. There's nothing indicating that. So I suggest that if you don't care about live service, then you can happily ignore all those games that they're about to release throughout the next 3 years. Now, going back to Firesprite, we have a quick story here where they've got multiple job listings that kind of tell us that looks like they're forming a brand new mobile division to build a new mobile game IP where, again, multiple job listings here, but this one for a senior narrative designer. It says, we are looking for a senior narrative designer to work as part of a cross-discipline team taking the early steps in the creation of a mobile gaming IP at Firesprite. So as far as I know, I believe this is our first example of a first-party PlayStation studio actually doing a mobile game in-house, because before, or at least not even before, we don't really know what they're doing yet with this mobile games initiative. We just know that they hired somebody to lead it, and we saw that one little Wipeout game come out, and that's kind of it, right? So at least for this, I believe this is our first example of a first-party team actually doing some sort of mobile games initiative in-house, which, Firesprite, brand new. They're quite a large team, recently acquired, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that, but it'll be a while until we see. Next up, nothing too major here, but it looks like Dreams might finally be getting a native PS5 version. Over on the subreddit Gaming Leaks and Rumors, one user noticed that when they were playing the trial version of Dreams, they decided to go buy it from the PS Store, and apparently a PS5 label showed up just for a bit or something where they tried to buy it. Obviously there is no PS5 version, and so they took a screenshot, and that's it. So there's speculation here on if Dreams is finally getting a PS5 version, which would be welcomed. And actually the Impy Awards are this coming Sunday, so maybe that's something where it will get announced, but we have to remember that a lot of visual bugs do happen on PSN. Sometimes we can scrub PSN and find things on the back end that are very much real, and oftentimes we can see that they weren't meant to be there, or it's displayed incorrectly. So it very much could be a visual bug, but it would be nice to see Dreams on PS5 natively, and also a PC release. I would like that for Dreams, especially because I would like more people to have access to that game and actually play it and mess with it, and make really cool, exciting things. And being on PS4, 5, and PC would help that greatly. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. And if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are all the stories that I wanted to talk about with you all from this past week. And our Tuesday video was kind of a PS5 rumor roundup, if you will. So a lot of things have been said in the last year, and that's a great way to get caught up. And on Wednesday, that was the PS5 system update. So if you want to see every single feature and change demonstrated on video, then also go take a look at that. That's a good resource. And coming up, I don't know what I've got planned for Tuesday just yet. I'll find out over the weekend, but until then, that's it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.